Chapter 5, Revelation. I had the really unusual experience of finding out exactly what I was going to do for the rest of my life on my 17th birthday. I assumed that for others, it does not simply fall into their laps like that, so I really should consider myself lucky. But with a few casually chosen words, Mom and Uncle Ron changed the course of my life forever. I was fiddling with the new watch Mom had given me, and was looking over at my new snowy owl, already named Solstice, when Mom abruptly stood up. "Hey, Lily," she said, "we need a few private minutes with your brother." Lily looked offended, but she was sort of expecting it. Mom and the rest of the family had taken James aside on his 17th. They'd spent several hours closeted with him. Not only that, but they placed a very strong, imperturbable charm on the place. I desperately hoped that this was not some sort of sex talk. I'd thought it was when it had happened with James, though I'd thought it weird that they didn't know that he'd been sleeping with witches before he came of age. And I didn't have a girlfriend, no thanks to that Wilder cow. Some of my apprehension must have shown on my face, for Uncle Ron gave me a lazy grin and said, "I can guess what you're thinking. James thought we were going to give him the talk, too. Little bugger, try to jump out the window." "No," Mom said seriously. "This is far more serious than sex. Though I hope you aren't following in your brother's footsteps," she said sternly. At that time, I didn't like my mother even saying that word in front of me. It was deeply embarrassing, especially when, just last week, she commented on how long I'd been in the shower. It was like she knew what I'd been doing, and, damn it, I thought my face was going to burn out. Yet another thing I can blame Wilder for, I thought resentfully. Everything she did infuriated me. I hated the way she wiggled her hips when she walked, and how she worried at her bottom lip when she was trying to concentrate, and the way her eyes glinted when she teased. But it was like watching a broomstick accident. I just couldn't look away. "I don't miss being a teenager," Uncle Ron said. "Who's the witch?" "It's Emily Wilder," Mum said. "Remember she stayed with us for a week a few summers ago?" "Before," she said, unnecessarily. It had been almost 3 years since we'd been friends. "It isn't Wilder," I said loudly. "I hate her." Mum and Uncle Ron exchanged, if you say so, glances, which did nothing to improve my temper. I realized almost immediately that they would not be convinced unless I acted casual. So I took a sip of tea. "Sorry," I said in a more normal tone. "She really does get on my nerves. And I was a little nervous that we were going to have the talk." I even laughed a little. "Are you trying your Slytherin tricks on me?" Uncle Ron asked. "Why would I need to?" I countered. I was careful to maintain eye contact. "I really dislike her. It's not a romantic thing." I felt a flash of triumph when I saw his uncertainty. Uncle Ron was a pretty perceptive bloke when it came to his nephews and son, so it was quite a trick to fool him. I was with Hugo in Hogsmeade the day after he got his first kiss, and Uncle Ron had met us, and he'd started laughing and teasing right away. I think Hugo had only mentioned her name, or something, so I felt like I'd gotten one past the keeper. "All right," he said finally. "That isn't what we wanted to talk to you about, anyway." Mum said. She looked steadily at me. "What if I told you that the story of Voldemort's defeat was only one half of what really happened?" I thought back to everything I knew about the war. I wasn't a complete moron. I knew that there was a secret. They'd never explained things to my satisfaction. For instance, how had they known where all the Horcruxes were? That had bugged me when I first heard it. But Dad had found them without too much trouble. He'd always said that it had something to do with him being a Horcrux, but Dad had gone into the wrong schoolhouse if he wanted to learn how to lie. And then, when I was 12, we'd gone to the celebration, and I overheard Dad tell Mom that they really should have told Dumbledore everything. What had Dad known that Dumbledore didn't? "Well, I've always sort of wondered how you found the Horcruxes when you were younger than 15, I admitted. And then the battle in the graveyard. That always just seemed weird to me. Are you going to tell me that Dad, or one of you is a seer, or anything?" Mum laughed a little sadly. "Do you know, Neville Longbottom asked us the same thing. Even Aunt Hermione was halfway convinced of it," Uncle Ron said fondly. "Where is Aunt Hermione?" I asked. "We thought it best that we do this just the two of us," Mum said. "It's our secret, after all. We travel back in time, Al," Uncle Ron said gently. "What? What?" I asked blankly. I stared at the both of them. "We used the tears of Merlin to travel back in time," said Mom. I know you've heard of the Tears of Merlin. We read you that fairy tale often enough. You always really loved it. Your dad and I thought that was very cute. I swallowed. My mind was racing very quickly. My mother had never, ever lied to me. Neither had my uncle. But it seemed like such an extravagant story. Normal people didn't just travel through time. But then again, I never heard anyone make the mistake of thinking that my parents and uncle were normal. I searched the depths of my memories and found one of Mom, Dad, and me sitting on their big bed, and I was pleading with them to read me that story. Just like his dad, Dad said fondly, ruffling my hair. And his Mom said indignantly. And we mustn't forget his Uncle Ron. And it explained how they knew where the Horcruxes were. And it explained how the Aurors had known to show up to the graveyard. Little bits of conversations I'd overheard, and tiny incongruities in the story. It clicked. It was like I'd been listening to the melody of a song for years, and then I heard the words, and it just fit. But why? I asked, confused. Uncle Ron chuckled. You're letting us off easily, Al. It took your brother a good hour of convincing. I thought we might need Veritaserum, Mum said. And you're less straightforward than James, Uncle Ron added. Confusion was still swirling around inside of me. But after a moment of hesitation, I had not considered not believing them. After all, I had grown up knowing that Dad's invisibility cloak was a deathly hallow, and Albus Dumbledore's wand was the Elder Wand. So it wasn't as though I had never been exposed to fairy tales made real before. I just didn't really understand why, though I thought I might have an idea. The first time ended badly. Mum said, everyone we loved was dead. You can't even imagine. Of course. And your dad had this idea, Uncle Ron said. Not right after, but he brought it up, and we went with it. It took us 10 years to do it, though. We had to look for the right way to do it, and we didn't have any help from anyone. Your mom was the one to finally discover the secret, though, and it took another 3 years before we went back. And then you saved everyone. As many as we could, Uncle Ron said. Having knowledge, that was priceless, but it was still a long road. I think Harry might have been right, Ron, Mum said. We really ought to have told Dumbledore straight away. I was going to have questions. I already did have questions, but I was not like James. I needed quiet to sort through my thoughts. My heart was racing in my chest. I felt like I had been given a gift. I have a question, I said. Why haven't you told people? Well, Mum said reluctantly. Not everyone. That kind of knowledge is dangerous in the hands of the wrong people. It's too much of a temptation. Back in the first reality, before we used the Tears of Merlin, Albus Dumbledore's portrait told us that we shouldn't play God. And frankly, we were very lucky that it turned out as well as it did. I don't regret it, of course, but I don't want my full story to cause people to make changes on a grand scale. Imagine if Voldemort, your Uncle Percy, had a falling out with the family about it. Uncle Ron said when Mum's voice trailed away. He wanted to go back and save the twins. He didn't speak to us for 3 years, Mum said sadly. I nodded, but my mind was racing. I abruptly stood up. Can I be excused? I need to think. I didn't wait for a reply, but practically raced out of the living room, nearly knocking over Lily, who was lying in wait despite the imperturbable charm, and up the stairs and into my room. I threw myself down on the bed. The implications of time travel were immense. The fact that it was possible to change so much. Mum had said that everyone besides them had been dead. Everyone. They had changed everything. And I could too. I don't remember the exact moment that I had made the decision to go back in time. It seems so obvious. I don't know why anyone didn't think of it before. Maybe if Dad had had an easier, gentler life, he wouldn't have gotten weak. He wouldn't have died. A half-plan began to form in my mind. I could change the prophecy. It didn't have to be Dad that became a Horcrux. He wouldn't have fought Voldemort, ever. And I knew that if it weren't for that asshole, Dad would live to a ripe old age. He went back in time to save everyone. I could go back to save him.